Okay, sorry pre-calc, my Chromebook went to sleep, so the video stopped. So here's the last part of the video. So what I was saying is I'm going to want to pick this sign max. So I've got to find out what that is. So I know that it's at the midline at 0 and again at the midline at pi over 2. So because of the symmetry then, I know that it's going to have to be at the max halfway, and that would be at pi over 4. So that pi over 4 is what I'm going to go ahead and plug right into this equation. And now I have an equation that I can solve for C. Now, there are a couple different ways you can solve this. You could go ahead and you could distribute the 2 to the pi over 4 and to the C, and you could get pi over 2 plus 2C. Absolutely would work. Another technique that I think is a little bit easier is to go ahead and just multiply both sides by the reciprocal of 2, which would be 1/2. You don't have to do that. You can, if you prefer solving the other way, distributing and go for it. But now I'm left with this pi over 4 plus C is equal to pi over 4. Because remember, when we multiply fractions, we just multiply straight across. Pi times 1 and 2 times 2. Now, once I continue solving, I'm just going to go ahead and subtract this pi over 4 from both sides. Those cancel, and it turns out in this exact example, pi minus 4 minus pi minus 4 is 0. So this phase shift actually turns out to be 0. There wasn't a phase shift. It just went ahead and horizontally compressed it by 1/2 and didn't shift it at all. Now, if I would have written that as a cosine example, that definitely would have been affected, and there would have been a phase shift, okay? Okay, let's skip example 3 for now, because while that's still fresh on our brains, I want us to practice more. So go ahead, pause the video, look at example 4, and do me a favor. Again, we are asked to write h of x as a sine function, but you should be able to find your values for a, b, and d because that's what you had for homework today. So go ahead, pause the video, use this graph, and tell me what a, b, and d are. Go. Okay, hopefully you had some time and you were able to find that. So as I'm taking a look here, I notice that if I start at the minimum, I go up, and then I come back to the minimum, that would be my period. So if my period is pi, I have another example where the b value is going to have to be 2. Again, that means it's a horizontal dilation by a factor of 1/2. So I'm vertically or horizontally compressing this periodic function. Okay. As far as my midline, that turns out to be 1. I have all of my halfway points right there at 1, and then my amplitude is going to be, again, 2, because it's 2 units above and 2 units below. So similar to what we just had, but we're going to go ahead and take a look at these. Okay. Now we're going to find our phase shift, and I'm going to let you know here that this does, in fact, have a phase shift. So I had to write a sine. So I'm thinking about the sine max equation. And I know that I'm going to use everything inside the parentheses. And normally, if it's a sine function, then normally that max is going to be at pi over 2. Here, it's not, though. Here, it is actually going to be, oh, in this case, I'm sorry, it is at pi over 2, but we started at its low point. Instead of starting at the midline and then moving up and so forth, that's what affected this. So I'm going to plug in my 2 here. I am going to still plug in the pi over 2 in for x because that's where this max is actually happening. But you'll notice, and you'll see in a second, what that does. So whether you want to distribute, you do whatever you want. I'm going to go ahead and multiply by the reciprocal of 2. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 1/2. So I end up with this pi divided by 2 plus c is equal to pi divided by 4. Now, when I go ahead and subtract this pi over 2 from both sides to cancel that out with c, I'm not going to be able to just cancel out like we did on the last one and get 0. Instead, what's going to happen is I'm going to have to do some fraction work to figure out what c is. So I have to take pi over 4 minus pi over 2. Good news, I know that when I'm subtracting fractions, I just need common denominators. So I'm going to change this to pi over 4 minus, I need pi over 2 to be something over 4. Well, if I multiplied the denominator by 2, I need to multiply the numerator by 2 also. So this is going to be 2 pi over 4. That is an equivalent form to pi over 2. Now when I go ahead and subtract with my common denominators, pi over 4 minus 2 pi over 4 is just negative pi over 4. And that would be my phase shift. So I actually needed to shift it minus pi over 4, which means then that it would be to the right pi over 4. But in my equation, I'm still going to write the negative pi over 4 because I'm algebraically finding that value for c. So that says I actually had to move it to the right pi over 4 because it's the opposite. So that would be my final equation. Okay, example 5. Very similar, only this one you do have to plot the points. So why don't you go ahead, pause the video, plot the points F, G, J, K, and P on the graph provided, and then figure out, again, what your A, B, and D values are. Your amplitude, your B, which is comes off of your period, and your midline. Go ahead, pause the video. Okay, so as we take a look here, this is what I got for my graph, okay? F is at 216, G is at 511, and so forth. That means that my period is actually from this 2 to 14. So my period turns out to be 2 minus 14, that is 12. To figure out my B value then, I'm going to go ahead and see what I need to multiply 12 by to build that up to the normal 12 pi, or 2 pi, excuse me. So when I divide both sides by 12, that turns out to be pi over 6. Or again, what I said before is you can definitely do what you did from the last video and just go ahead and take the 2 pi, the normal period, and divide it by 12. That's your B value. Your midline turns out to be 11. That's that middle point. And then your amplitude turns out to be 5. Now, go ahead, pause the video, and try to find your C value. Keep in mind that you are, once again, asked to find the sine function. That's what we're really focusing on here to get better at that. So find the sine maximum, same way we just did example 2 and 4. Once you think you have it or you get stuck, then press play. Okay, hopefully you were able to at least get started. So to find C, it's a sine max. So my normal equation that I'm going to set up would be B times x plus C equals pi over 2, because that's when the normal sine max happens. For B, I'm going to plug in this pi over 6 that we found. And then for x, I have a couple different options. You can either plug in the 2 from the maximum at F or 14 from the maximum at P. I just like to use smaller numbers, so I went ahead and plugged in 2. So when it comes to solving this then, I multiplied both sides by the reciprocal of pi over 6, which would cancel these. And over here on the right, this is going to be 6 pi over 2 pi, because I'm just multiplying straight across, and that turns out to be 3, because your pi's cancel out, and it's 6 divided by 2. Real quickly, to solve for C then, I'm just going to subtract 2 from both sides, and I should get C is equal to 1. So there's my equation. I have 5 plugged in from the amplitude, sine, pi over 6. Don't forget to put double parentheses around that B value. Then T. You could use X, but because the equation used T, I used T, plus that 1 that I found over here, and then plus 11 from my midline. Okay, let's go to example 6. We have 2 more. And again, I want you to practice. So pause the video. Try to get through everything if you can. If you can't, at least try to find your A, B, and D. Get as far as you can with C, and then press play once you get stuck or once you think you have the answer. If you didn't get the correct answer, then watch the video and my explanation and try to figure out where you made your mistake. Okay, here we go. Here's my graph. Okay, with that information, I noticed that my period, again, is 12. So because my period is 12, that's the same B value as before, pi over 6. Midline this time is 3, and my amplitude this time is 4. So I am asked to find a sine equation again. So if I do that, then I'm going to set up my sine max to figure out that C value. Now normally that's going to be B times x plus C equals that pi over 2. But here I'm going to plug in the pi over 6 for B, and I have 2 choices. I can either plug in the 0 from my maximum at F or the 12 from my maximum at P. I went ahead and plugged in 0 because I like 0 a lot more. When you multiply by the reciprocal, you end up getting 0 plus C equals 3, and anytime it's just plus 0, don't worry about it. So my final equation is h of t equals 4 times the sine of pi over 6 times t plus 3, and then plus 3 for the midline. Okay, last one. Try it again. You have a sine again. I just wanted to practice the sine. Next class we'll focus more on cosine, but it's real quick and easy how to do that. This one is a little trickier because you have some pi values in there, but that's okay. Go ahead, try to plot the points, and do as much as you possibly can. And when you get stuck or you're done, press play and find out if you got the right answer or where you got stuck. Okay, here we go. There's my graph. I see that the period would have to be 4 pi. If the period is 4 pi, I need to think about what I need to multiply that by to build it up to the normal 2 pi, or 2 pi divided by 4 pi, and you end up with B being 1/2. My midline is at 16, and my amplitude would be 4. So I am 3/4 of the way to the equation with those 3 answers. Now let's try to figure out what my C value or phase shift is. For my phase shift, I'm going to start with the normal equation again. B times x plus C equals pi over 2. For B, I'm going to plug in the 1/2. And then for my x value, again, I get the options of plugging in 0 from the maximum here or 4 pi from the maximum at P. I chose 0 again. I multiply both sides by 2 over 1, which leaves me with C is equal to pi. Now, if there were something else, if that wasn't a 0, if I would have used the 4 pi over here, if I would have plugged in 4 pi plus C, then all I would have had to do was subtract 4 pi from both sides, and then that would have been negative 3 pi. So not only can I have the equation that I originally had here, that was plus pi for the phase shift, and then 16 for the midline, 4 for the amplitude, and 1/2 for B. I could also, another equation, if you put this into your graphing calculator, would be if I put negative 3 pi here for my C value, because I would have been getting that from my other maximum value. It just means we have to do more of a phase shift instead of just the plus pi or going to the left pi. We then would have to go to the right 3 pi. So it's just a different way to look at it. Okay? Go ahead and go back to example 3, give that one a shot real quick. This is just using the equation that you're given and trying to figure out what the minimum and maximum would be. When you think you got it, press play. Okay, so from the equation, I know the midline is 12, and I know the amplitude is 2.4. That actually, negative 81, phase shift right 81, and the B value of 0.017 is never going to affect my minimum and maximum. It's going to be my midline where I start and how much higher or lower I go. So taking that information, I know that my maximum is going to have to be the midline plus the amplitude. And then I know that the minimum is going to have to be that midline minus the amplitude. So the maximum value would be at 14.4 hours, which I do not have as an option. And the minimum is going to be at 9.6. So C would be your correct answer. So not only do you have to write the equations, you also have to be able to kind of interpret them too, okay? Okay, if you need to rewatch this, I know it's kind of confusing to start with, but just the more times you do this and practice with it, the easier it's going to get, okay? So rewatch it, pause it, whatever you need to do. And if you have questions, let me know. Good luck, guys.